What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we'll be comparing the new Samsung Galaxy S20 5G to Apple's iPhone 11. Now, I know these kinds of comparisons aren't always so straightforward, and there are a ton of factors to consider when it comes to choosing an iPhone versus a Samsung phone or using iOS versus Android. But I still wanted to make this video mainly because, at least here in the US, these are the devices that most everyone will be deciding between over the next few months if they're in the market for something new. And interestingly enough, with Samsung doing away with its cheaper S10e device that it had last year, this standard size S20 is now technically the cheapest S-series phone you can buy, while the price on the iPhone 11, Apple's cheapest offering, comes in significantly lower. You could argue that a more fair comparison might be to put the iPhone 11 up against the A51 or A71, and I will do that for sure in another video. But for now, let's focus on these phones here and everything you get with each. First off, in regards to the price, we've got a pretty significant difference here, like I mentioned. The new S20 has a retail price of $999. And that's the price point I'm going to reference for this video. But there are some deals and discounts you can take advantage of that might make your decision a little easier. For example, Amazon is still running a bundle deal with a free dual wireless charger and free pair of Galaxy Buds with a purchase of the phone. You can also trade in your old device to Samsung for a discount as well. And there are a few resellers popping up that are already discounting this device by $100 to $150. So definitely shop around a bit and you'll probably wind up saving some money. In regards to the iPhone 11, this device starts at $699, which is a pretty good price in comparison. But something to keep in mind, with the S20, you get 128 gigabytes of internal storage for $999. To match that with the iPhone 11, you'll need to opt for the $749 model instead. Furthermore, the S20 has expandable storage via an SD card for potentially hundreds more gigabytes of space. The iPhone does not. And if you wanted to even attempt to match the S20, the highest you could go and the most you can spend is 256 gigabytes for $849. So yes, while the iPhone is still technically cheaper, even with the highest storage capacity option, you have the potential to get significantly more space, both built-in and via SD card with the S20. And by the way, I'm always on the hunt for the best deals and cheapest prices for these phones. So if you want to do some comparison shopping of your own or check out all the discounts, I'll leave some links down below to Amazon, B&H Photo, and some other places where you can get these phones. Physically, both these phones look and feel great, and I think they give off a sense of quality that justifies their pretty hefty price tag. To keep it simple, they're both made from a combination of glass and metal. And really, I think it just comes down to which design and form factor you personally prefer. The iPhone has a very even form factor with flat glass on the front and back, coupled with a smooth and rounded matte finish aluminum edge running all the way around. The S20 has a similar glass sandwich design, but with a polished chrome accent instead, and edges that make the phone feel thinner in the hand, since they're tapered a bit more. And around back, you can see while the iPhone has a flat color finish, the S20 rocks Samsung's signature color shifting rainbow effect on top with that light blue colorway. Size-wise, these phones appear to be pretty close, but there are actually a number of differences that impact how they compare to one another, how they feel in the hand, and ultimately how you might use them. The S20 is a 6.2-inch device, while the iPhone 11 is a 6.1-inch phone, so screen sizes are close, but the design and aspect ratio are much more different the closer you look. The S20 is a bit taller than the iPhone 11, which makes sense, but it's actually slimmer than the iPhone 11. It's hard to tell when the phones are side by side, but with a top-down view, you can really see the difference. Not only did Samsung opt for the taller 20:9 aspect ratio that elongates things a bit versus the 19.5:9 on the iPhone, but Samsung also did a much better job with the screen-to-body ratio. That is, cramming as much screen real estate in as small a form factor as possible. And this is where the iPhone really loses a lot of points. All the way around, the iPhone 11 has noticeably thicker bezels and borders around the display, while the S20 almost appears to have the screen reach every corner. On top of that, the iPhone 11 retains its massive top notch that houses all the front camera and Face ID tech, while Samsung has been committed to their Infinity O camera cutout, making the selfie camera as small and as disguised as possible. Side by side, that huge difference in bezels really makes the iPhone look dated, even though these phones are just a few months apart. And through the years, Samsung has continued to push the boundaries on bezels and screen real estate, while Apple has done little to improve. Taking a look around at everything else these phones offer, you can see that the iPhone has its volume buttons and mute switch to the left and power buttons on the right, while the S20 has all the buttons off on the right. The SIM and SD card tray are on the top of the S20, while the iPhone's SIM-only tray is on the bottom right side of the device. Underneath, both phones have a speaker and mic along with their respective charging ports. Lightning for the iPhone and USB-C for the S20. And around back, pretty significant differences in camera hardware, which I'll go more in-depth with in just a few minutes. In regards to that speaker setup though, both phones offer stereo sound, utilizing the earpiece as a second external speaker. I think both phones do sound fantastic. The S20 seems to go a bit louder to me, but I like the iPhone a bit more overall as far as the sound. Here's a sample of each so you can decide for yourself. Now, beyond the bezels and notch, these phones also have drastically different display technology that I think separates them even further. It's no secret that the iPhone 11 is Apple's budget offering, and with that comes their lowest end display, a 6.1-inch Liquid Retina IPS LCD panel at a resolution of just 1792 by 828 and 326 pixels per inch. The S20, on the other hand, offers a dynamic AMOLED 2x display with a maximum resolution of 1440 by 3200, cramming 563 pixels per inch. Now, as a longtime iPhone 11 user now, I'm fine with the display. I don't have any complaints. I think it looks pretty good, but I also know what I have. Compared to the S20, there's just no competition. Samsung's display is bolder, brighter, it offers better colors, and is obviously significantly more detailed in every way. It's the far better display, offering a noticeably better viewing experience no matter what you do. And I'm not going to try and justify or prop up the iPhone 11 at all. We're comparing LCD to AMOLED, and anyone would be able to tell a difference if they have these phones side by side. I think if there's an area where the iPhone 11 lags behind in a pretty unreasonable way versus the S20, it is with the screen. And that's just something we've all known. It's not a surprise. And it's the route Apple decided to take, starting with the iPhone XR. And honestly, if you're just looking for one single reason to go with the S20 over the iPhone 11, the screen is probably your answer. In addition to a better viewing experience, the S20 also offers one more additional display feature: a new 120Hz refresh rate. For iPhone users who maybe have never experienced this, it's basically a smoother, more fluid experience while touching and navigating through the phone. It's tough to explain or even capture on camera, but a 120Hz display offers a more precise and snappy feel. Now with the S20, you do have to choose between that higher refresh rate or the maximum screen resolution. But either way, those are both display features that the iPhone lacks. Another thing the iPhone lacks is any sort of fingerprint unlock. Apple abandoned Touch ID long ago in favor of Face ID, which contributes to that significant notch towards the top of the screen, which houses much of the sensors. The S20, on the other hand, offers a fingerprint sensor underneath the display, which I found to be pretty useful and fairly accurate. With the S20 though, you can also set up Face Unlock as well, which is even quicker, though not as secure. All in all, the combination of fingerprint unlock and Face Unlock altogether means I'm into my S20 more quickly and more consistently than the iPhone, whereas Face ID is something I tend to fight with from time to time. One aspect of these phones that's sort of tough to compare is the internal specs that each device offers. On paper, the S20 seems to have the edge. It has the Snapdragon 865 processor, Adreno 650 GPU, and 8GB of RAM. The iPhone has Apple's own A13 Bionic chip and GPU, and just 4GB of RAM. But in practice, iOS and Android are fairly different operating systems. Apps load and launch differently. They behave in unique ways, and Apple has complete control over both the hardware and the software. So not only can they better optimize everything, but but they also can ensure third-party apps are up to their high standards. While it is true that Samsung has had better control over the user experience, for example, by offering their own processor in international devices, launching One UI 2, and cleaning up the interface significantly, I think they still are at the mercy of Google's Android OS, and that sometimes puts them at a disadvantage overall. I do think the S20 has more potential in regards to what it can offer. It obviously has better internals after all, and that unlocks a lot of different things for this phone, but specs aren't everything, and I think it really comes down to which operating system you personally prefer, and which ecosystem you're already heavily invested in. In everyday use, these phones perform perfectly. They're both towards the higher end of the smartphone market after all, and that's what you should expect. There isn't anything that these phones can't handle. In regards to their cameras, these phones have pretty different hardware and software features. I think this is another pretty big deciding factor in choosing one over another. Around back, the iPhone 11 has two lenses, a 12 megapixel f1.8 aperture main shooting lens, and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens. The S20 has three lenses around back, including a 12 megapixel f1.8 main lens, a 64 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens. Now, I'm going to be doing a separate dedicated camera comparison video so you can see the real-world differences in shooting, but let's talk about the major differences in features and functions. The S20 offers a handful of extras that the iPhone 11 does not. The telephoto lens, for example, is super useful. You've got optical hardware zoom and significantly more digital zoom than on the iPhone 11, which means zoomed in pictures look sharper and you can zoom in much farther. You can also shoot in 8K on the S20, and while I don't think too many people will take full advantage of this, I can at least respect Samsung's efforts in offering this ridiculous shooting mode on a smartphone. Samsung also offers a handful of other software features and shooting modes that the iPhone doesn't offer, like live focus video, some pro modes, some extra filters and assistants. In the end though, it's really going to come down to which pictures and videos you personally prefer and how much those extra little software features matter to you. I'm still impressed with how good the iPhone is with its pictures and videos, and even with less hardware and less software features, this phone can easily compete. The front cameras on these phones differ a bit too. The S20 has a 10 megapixel shooter, while the iPhone 11 offers a 12 megapixel selfie camera. Again, there are some additional software things on the Samsung side that Apple doesn't offer, and vice versa, but it still really comes down to which pictures and videos you personally prefer. Though for me, I think the iPhone tends to have the advantage with selfies. A couple other things to mention: both phones offer wireless charging, which is fine, but it's the wired charging capabilities where a big difference exists. The iPhone can technically support fast charging up to 18 watts via USB-C, but you don't even get that bigger, faster charger in the box with this phone. It ships with the little 5-watt adapter, so if you want to charge faster, you have to go out and buy the extra accessories after the fact. Samsung gives you the most up-to-date, super fast 25-watt charger in the box, which is exactly the way it should be. And as far as the battery capacities, the iPhone has a 3110 milliamp battery, while the S20 has a 4000 milliamp capacity. With this though, the difference in battery size isn't significant, especially since the phones have different specs, different displays, and different operating systems. The iPhone 11 might offer better battery life overall in real-world use, but it's mainly going to come down to how you personally use your specific device. And finally, both phones are water-resistant, which is something I personally find very important, so no complaints there. So here are my final thoughts. These phones are obviously very different, and they each have their own pros and cons. Value-wise, if you're trying to get into the Apple ecosystem, the iPhone 11 is the cheapest way to do it. The S20 is significantly more expensive, even being the cheapest S phone out right now. But with that price tag, you get, in my opinion, a significantly better phone all around. A nicer design, a better display, and more features overall. I don't necessarily think these phones are meant to compete with one another. The iPhone 11 Pro is probably a more fair comparison versus the S20, but in the end, Samsung isn't offering any cheaper new phone options while Apple is. And I think that's the main advantage the iPhone has. Price is just one factor though. There's a lot to consider, and it's really going to come down to whether you prefer iOS or Android too. So there you go. That's everything you need to know about the new S20 and the iPhone 11. Let me know if I missed anything important, and of course, feel free to leave your own thoughts down below in the comments. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.